Hi, I'm Billy Keels, the host of the Going Long podcast. Every week, I'm going to be here interviewing the absolute best in the business as it relates to real asset investing, as well as real Main Street investors. We're going to be having conversations where you can listen in, and that's going to help you to continue on your path to education so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident in investing long distance. So make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you're liking it as well, because that way you can get every single episode as soon as it comes out. And by the way, don't forget to leave today's episode a 5-star review. Let's go ahead and listen to today's conversation. Welcome to the Going Long podcast, where we're back once again to continue to help to educate you so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. I'm your host, Billy Keels, and if you've ever wanted to learn how to find and invest in only epic opportunities, then guess what? Today's the conversation that you're going to want to listen to until the very last word, because today's guest not only focuses considerable effort on philanthropic ventures that are focused on children's issues, poverty, literacy, as well as mental and physical health. In his over 25 years, he's done over $500 million in real estate transactions. And this is the cool part, like across 12 different states. That's really phenomenal, especially here on the Going Long podcast. He's also competed 16 years on an elite adventure racing team. He serves on a number of boards and committees like the Anti-Defamation League, International Tech and Trade Network, as well as being the co-founder of Laundry Love, and he's the president and CEO of Only Epic Holdings. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to today's conversation, Mr. Jason Mittman. Jason, welcome to the conversation.
Thanks, Billy. It's great to be here.
Yeah, man, I love your energy, man. And I love so many different things that you're doing, even beyond real estate. And just, I want to say one thing, like just really quickly, because also before we even get the conversation started, this is a conversation that you're going to need to watch on the video version, because Jason has this amazing piece of artwork behind him. And it was mesmerized. I just till you see it. And he's going to be much more captivating, but it's amazing. So I just wanted to say that. And there's a great story behind it. So definitely, if you're running on the treadmill or something like that, check out the video version as well. So with that, Jason, as you know, I'm really excited about you being here. And you know that I ask everybody kind of the same, at least 5 questions, 2 in the beginning and then 3 in the end. And in the middle, we're going to talk a lot about you, and people are going to get a chance to understand a lot of the different lives that you've impacted. And that kind of part of the conversation, who knows wherever we go. But we want to get started and just understanding, where do you live in the United States?
I live in Golden, Colorado, which is a suburb of Denver, Colorado. We're about in the center of the U.S., and it was a wonderful choice, and it was a choice to move here.
Fantastic. And my brother and sister were both born in Colorado, so I have a special place in my heart for the state of Colorado as well. So also, what is the most positive thing that's happened to you in the last 24 hours, Jason?
I am so lucky. I have a lot of positive things happen to me on a daily basis. And I know it's going to sound crazy, but yesterday I had to go to the doctor and get a minor surgery on my foot. And I have great health insurance, and I have the financial ability to pay for it without worry. And I have a great doctor. And while we're going through this process, she's making some changes in her practice, and I was able to give her some business advice. So to me, it's so positive when you can have a relationship with anyone. And that was a great example of positive dialogue in both ways, and recognize your life is way better than most. So if you can go in, you can see a doctor and take care of it, that's great. And our staff call was yesterday too, and I've got a great staff. So those are always good.
All right, fantastic. And yes, when you get those dialogues that go both ways, and you're really able to add value mutually, it's such a wonderful feeling. And yes, when you're fortunate enough to have your needs covered, it's something, when you're aware of it and you're conscious of it, it just makes it even that much better. So thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that. And, Jason, and I always try in the beginning to tell your story, and I do it from my 50,000 foot level, and I do it as best as I can. And the team does a lot of research and stuff like that. But I would really love for you to share your backstory with the Going Long family, and really help us understand, if you can maybe think about a couple of major decision points that you came across that have helped you to get to this point in your journey, would also be really, really helpful, please.
Sure. That's a great question, Billy. Thank you. Mm-hmm. I would say the first most important decision was I was 17 or 18 years old, and I had a lawn mowing business. I've been very entrepreneurial since I was in elementary school. I'd knock on doors to rake leaves and mow lawns. And so I had a pretty significant sized lawn business by the time I was a senior in high school. And I went to do a bid on a gentleman's yard that was referred to me by the name of Bobby Jory in San Antonio, Texas. And I'm looking in this backyard. I mean, this is the kind of backyard you see on the cover of Landscape Magazine or Southern Living. And I mean, we cut grass, and there was little strips of grass between the fountains and the flower beds and and I said, Mr. Jory, I cut grass, and all the guys who work for me cut grass. But if you teach me, I'll do it for free while you teach me, and then I'll teach my guys, and we'll do it for free until you're satisfied. And then once we get it right, we'll start charging you. And he looked at me and he said, well, I don't have time for that, but I really appreciate your honesty. Thank you. If you ever need anything, here's my card. And he gave me his card, and it said, Jory Zucker and Associates, Attorneys at Law, Robert Jory, Managing Partner. This is, I think, 1988. And it had at least four phone numbers in 88, including one that said mobile. And I was like, what the hell's mobile? And he did say, don't call me on the mobile. It's $3 a minute. Put that in perspective, right? $3 per minute on your cell phone versus now it's like you have a landline, right? So I sat on that card for 2 weeks, and this was the 80s. And in the United States, then so the tax law changed in the early 80s. Mm-hmm. And everyone says, real estate's location, location, location. It is after timing. Yeah. So if your timing's off, like in the 80s with the tax law change and the savings and loans collapse and the oil field collapses, you have real problems. Mm. So there were a lot of foreclosed homes, and we had some bids. We went and mowed them. And I remember thinking, there's got to be a way to make money on all these empty homes. I just didn't understand more than that. Mm. So after 2 weeks, I called Mr. Jory and I said, and I called the one that said direct. Again, I had no clue. And he answered it. And he goes, Bobby Jory. And I said, hi, Mr. Jory. My name's Jason Mittman. I came, and he cut me off. He goes, I know who you are. What do you want? And I was like, well, I'd like to ask you a question. And he goes, you just did. What do you want? I said, only a 17-year-old or 18-year-old, I don't remember my exact age, would ask this. I said, well, I'd like to know how you make your money. Because I saw his house, right? And he had this big, giant Cadillac in the driveway. And there was this long pause. He called it the pregnant pause. It's a very important tool in negotiating. Just let the air sit. And he said, are you asking me how I make money or how I'm wealthy? And I said, well, they're the same thing. He goes, no, they're not. Be here Monday at 9:30 a.m. It's the law office, dressed professionally. And then he hung up on me, kind of like,
what's that all about?
Okay. So, because he was trying to instill that time matters and be succinct and don't waste people's time. Because that's truly the only commodity we have on this planet, right? Everything else you can replace. Time you can't. And what's worse, we have no idea how much time is in the time bank account. All we know is it's depleting every second. Yep. So choose wisely. So I show up, and I had a cheap suit, and I had a pair of black dress shoes, and I did the best I could. I had a black Sharpie, and I tried to fill in the broken soles of the shoes, and I show up and I pressed the shirt best I could, which was not a good. And it was just this. It was, I remember getting off on the floor of the building, and I was so confused because it had two buttons, 13 and 14. No, it wasn't 13. I think it was 12 and 14. And you'd hit the button, and the 12 didn't work. So I hit the 14. I didn't realize people took whole floors of an office building. I get off the elevator. I'm looking around. I'm inside the office off the elevator, which was even more confusing, right? And the ladies answered, Jory Zucker and Associates, Jory Zucker, and the wooden walls, think of Texas oil law firm. Yeah. And they take me back to his corner office, and he sits me down. They close the door. And I was across this giant, what was called a partner desk, old school desk designed for two, but it was his. And he had a beautiful piece of art behind him. And he said, and he looked at me for a second, and he goes, I make my money as a lawyer. I'm wealthy from real estate. Do you want to learn? And he kept me under, and I said, yeah. He said, we do whatever I tell you to. And I said, yes. And he kept me under his wing for about 9 years. Mm. And this was everything from Mr. Miyagi of, okay, go paint these pilings in bollards, to clean this warehouse, to we're showing it, to now you're coming with me to meet with the brokers, to, okay, now you have to hire people and they better do a better job than you, or I'm going to have you fire them. I'm going to fire you. But it was done with love, right? Mm-hmm. This is a lease, and he had a master's in tax law from NYU. And he would not let me use his 52-page lease until I could explain and argue every single paragraph with him. Wow. This is a balance sheet. This is what's important to a bank. This is what's important to an investor. And took me to meetings over this long period of time and was just amazing. So that was, I think, the most critical decision point to me. I think the next most critical decision point was the first deal I did was in a small town between Austin and Houston, Texas. But I knew it was on the highway, and and it was bank-owned REO, and I knew more about it than the bank. And that's really key. The one who has the most data, you're in a position not only of strength, but you're also in a position of security for yourself and for your investors. Know the market, know the basis. And as I was driving to sit down to meet with this banker with a pad full of notes, I thought, I'm not going to do it. And I called Bobby Jory and I said, and he answered, he goes, aren't you supposed to be on your way to this meeting? I said, I'm not gonna go. And he goes, why? Or did you get in a wreck? Are you okay? What happened? And I told him, the banker's going to say no. And there was this long pregnant pause. And Bobby never swore, and he never raised his emotions, which is another important lesson. There's only one person in charge of your emotions, and that's you. And you can't raise your emotions in a meeting, because then the next person's in charge. You get angry, they're in charge. You control everything, especially in negotiations. But I told him that, and he goes, and pardon my language, you may have to bleep this out. And he goes, you asshole. It is not up to you to say no, it's up to them. Get in your car right now and go. And then he hung up on me, which he hadn't done in years. So I went and I pitched, and I literally had one of those leather, things that hold the yellow pad. And I pitched and I went to close it. But I had told the banker this was a new bank president. And I was talking about the asbestos. I was talking about how they owned it for 14 years and the eyesore. And the banker's eyes were getting big. He didn't know the liability. What I had was a diamond in the rough. And I went to close the book to stand up to leave. I was literally going like this. And he goes, okay. And I kind of went. So I sat back down. And I have that LOI that we agreed to signed and mounted on the wall in my office, because it was that critical of a deal. It was not critical in dollars. It was critical in getting me propelled to go forward. Does that help?
Very, very helpful. And it helps. And it's helping the entire Going Long family to get to know you, right? And so as you're telling the story, there were two different things that were going through my mind. The first was Bob Berg, the go-giver, and really having that type of an opportunity to learn from experience. And of course, Rich Dad, Poor Dad comes into mind as well, right? And so I guess the question that I was thinking of, Jason, was when you called Mr. Jory, for those 9 years, were you also with him in a kind of free apprenticeship to be able to learn? Is that how that worked? And I have a follow-on question from that, but was when you showed up the next day, the better question is, when you showed up the next day, were you there with intention to just simply learn, or were you looking to actually learn and be compensated for your learning?
My intention at first was just to learn. However, he compensated. Now, not much, compensated enough to keep me very hungry.
Yep.
Not much more than that. And it also became much more, became almost a father-son relationship over the years, which was extraordinary.
Okay. And so when you get these extraordinary father-son type of relationships, I guess it takes me back to when you were cutting the lawn, right? Because you were willing to give of your time, right? You said free, but you're giving your time, which is your most valuable asset, right? And then you had the audacity to actually give him a call later to understand kind of how he made his money. And then he challenged you to your thinking to not just how I make my money, but how am I wealthy? And then a second time, you were also willing to just show up to invest your most important asset, which was your time once again. So, and I guess what is helping us as a Going Long family is really to recognize that there are many opportunities when you're willing to give of your time in terms of being able to learn something, not always looking for compensation, meaning currency, to be able to do things, which is one of the reasons why I talked about in the very beginning. It's probably helped you, that mindset, to be able to have over $500 million worth of transactions across 12 different states. I wonder if you how those early on experiences have helped you to make the impact on lives that you've been making today. And I guess you can look through a lens of the real estate or just lives in general.
Yes, those are some very good comments, Billy. And I would say, first, it's important that people recognize. So I relate this to climbing big. I love climbing big, scary, difficult mountains. Mont Blanc, the Dufourspitz, the Matterhorn, Eiger, Aconcagua, but I prefer the harder routes. When you start on a journey, there's a lot of people all around you. Everybody's ready to start. But are you ready to work? And are you ready to say, yeah, I'll do this, give up your time and work hard and do things others won't, right? At the top of the mountain, the views are beyond spectacular. Twice in my life, I've sat on a mountaintop and watched, once on Mont Blanc and once on Shasta, and watched the sunrise, but the sun came up behind us. So as we're viewing the sunrise in front of us, one of the things we're seeing is another mountain that was gifted to us. And what the mountain is the shadow of the mountain we're standing on, because the sun is coming up behind us, and it is massive. It's confusing. You almost look like, where'd that mountain come from on a map? You don't get to have that kind of reward, right? Unless you push. So as you're going up the mountain, there are fewer and fewer people around you, right? So you keep going and you go, well, the weather's getting bad. Real estate, the weather gets bad. It's getting harder, getting funding, getting investors, tenant problems. But I still have my core team, right? The people surround. I've learned, I've prepared. Things get crazy. You get off course, you get back on course. Challenges happen. And at the top, you have this most amazing gift. The reward of real estate can provide you returns for a lifetime with savvy investing or savvy people you invest with, in the views and things you experience on a mountain. That's why when you're up there, there's almost no one else at the top. Everyone else says, that's a lot of work. I think I'm just going to turn around and go find something else to do. So it's very similar, right? Gift your time, but do it meaningfully. So if someone reaches out and says, I'd like you to mentor me. Billy says, hey, Jason, I'd like you to mentor me. Okay, tell me what kind of questions, what do you want to do? So, well, I'd like to understand what a cap rate is and what a loan is. And I'm going to say, Billy, go look it up online. Call me back with some things I can actually add value to you for, because you don't need me to answer that. So be cautious with what you're asking for. And be committed.
Yeah, I love that. And that's part of effective, those people, whether you call them coaches, mentors, but the people that are really going to help to elevate your thinking is go to them once you've done the basic work. And it was interesting. You just mentioned that. I remember at a certain point, I paid for this really high value mentoring program. And the one thing that I took away from the mentoring program was, I don't really need to ask most of the questions because I can find it on Google. It's once I've gone through the basic kind of things and I get to the levels that I'm like, okay, well, actually, I've already looked that up. I don't understand. This is where it's connected. So then the questions became much more relevant, and they were also demonstrating that I was doing the work. I wasn't just trying to find the minimum. I realized that, hey, look, I've done this, but I'm stuck now. And so this is where the coaches, the mentors, the people in your life that can really help push you to the next level.
That's right. And accountability is so if you get a good mentor or a good person, accountability is absolutely critical.
Yeah, absolutely.
Combined with tough goals.
Love that. And so, one of the questions I wanted to know is, as you think about like Only Epic, like what's the reason for Only Epic?
So the tagline, if that's the right vocabulary, is live an epic life. Mm-hmm. right? And I mean that. I have been so fortunate on my journey. I've done adventure races around the world with one of the finest teams on the planet. And through that, have pushed. The longest race we've done is just under 7 days. And during those 7 days, 6 days, 23 hours, we had about 14 hours of sleep, or an average of 2 hours of sleep per 24 hours you move, right? That's living epic. For my 30th birthday, I decided to do a birthday challenge and raise $30,000 for an organization called the Young Survival Coalition, over 30 hours doing incredibly crazy athletic stunts. But the real goal is to raise awareness that young women get breast cancer. That's epic, right? I'm working on a book right now that we're close to, on yearly, quarterly, weekly, daily, of setting your goals and pushing forward, but in a way with gratitude and focus, and remembering to say yes to something means you should be saying no to a lot. To say no is really difficult and requires a live an epic life mindset, because if I say yes to every deal, I'm going to be a generalist that does poorly at most deals. If I say no, I can have a few epic deals. So I look for very specific returns, which are well above market. But I also, the questions we ask are epic kind of questions. Is this a property we would own for 20 years, whether we hold it 12 months or 20 years? Is this a property that we'd be proud the community knows we own? Is this a property where we'd be proud to take our children and our neighbors and our family into every single tenant? You know, you have to make big decisions to move forward, to live an epic life, to live with pride and live knowing that you're contributing to society, as well as providing, you know, the typical things, above market returns to investors and all the other pieces.
So, and I love that you take that thought process, like actively thinking about that in terms of not just financial returns. It's about making an impact in the community. It's about making sure that you are attracting and bringing the type of investors that want to be able to do the same types of, have the same type of impact that you really want to be able to have. So I think that's phenomenal. And at the same time, I recognize if we think about it in a real assets or tangible assets, right? Real estate, a lot of people will call it, right? You take, I would consider somewhat of a contrarian view, right? Because you like to look at things like industrial or retail or hotels, if we've understood correctly. So maybe you could help us also, as that plays into the only epic, what is giving you this world view, or this, what I would call maybe this contrarian view, to look into these types of real assets, the retail, the industrial, and hotels?
So for hotels, we have a great partner who's a operator and developer of hospitality, and we co-invest with him and let him take lead. Mm-hmm. So we make sure that we focus on what we know, and if the opportunity is strong enough through underwriting, that if what we know is the person and the operator, but we don't know the asset, but we believe in the asset, we let him run with it, and we'll come in and help however we can. On retail and industrial, it's an area that you have to have refinement, right? And again, it's the same thing. So if I came to you and said, hey, Billy, we're raising money and I'm buying foreclosed houses, land, some movie theaters, some medical office buildings, some self-storage, some apartments, and an amusement park, and none of them are anywhere near each other, and you're going to be like, well, that sounds really cool. Do you have anybody who can do any of that? Well, no, but we'll figure it out. Right? That takes you off the path to success. So one of the things that's necessary, in my opinion, with this epic concept and how to invest properly is, number one, I syndicate deals, but I put at least a third of the money as my own. So whatever I'm saying, that I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Mm-hmm. Number two, it has to be an area we believe in, right? In a product we believe in. Mm-hmm. Okay. And number three, which supersedes the first two, is the Warren Buffett model. Don't lose money. You have an obligation.
Yeah.
Right.
Rule number one.
Rule number one, don't lose money. rule number 2, remember rule number 1. Exactly. And when you're accepting other people's money, I view that money as much more valuable than my own. You have a fiduciary obligation to protect and defend.
Yep.
And so the best way you're going to protect and to defend is to do products that you've well underwritten in an area that you can well manage and know and care for properly. Yeah. Care for the golden goose.
Yeah, definitely care for the golden goose, and having that respect and appreciation for having someone else's goals and dreams, which they transfer in terms of currency, right? And so then having and accepting those goals and those dreams and being able to deliver on that, it's a huge responsibility, right? And it is a much larger responsibility than even having your own capital in the deal, because that is something that's it's just they're interesting dreams and goals. So one of the other things then, I am curious, because someone who is constantly evaluating risk, because as you mentioned before, you love climbing and there's like a lot of risk in that. And so as you are evaluating the climbing and the risk that goes with making the next step and the next line and things like that, and I don't have a lot of culture there, but I'm just imagining, when you translate that something that you love, climbing, and then you also evaluate risk in the investment arena, what are some of the things that you've learned that in doing something that you love in climbing that you're also translating into the way that you are evaluating risk for your potential investors?
It's a fantastic question. I like the analogy. It was a good job, man.
Thank you.
There was a part of a multi-day adventure race in Lake Tahoe, California. And we were many days in, and it was a rappel. And Subaru was the sponsor of this race. So and it was like the longest rappel in history, and it was on, I think, CBS or NBC. So they won good television. You couldn't see anywhere near the bottom. And the anchors were 3 Subarus, meaning the ropes were tied to the axles of these 3 Subarus. And I'm like, okay. And so my teammate, it's a team of 4, you race together. And my teammate for that rappel was Kip.
And sorry, Jason, just one thing, because maybe a lot of people, and like, for instance, when you say a rappel, what does that mean exactly?
Abseiling. So that's when you're on a rope. The European term is abseiling, I think. Okay. When you're on a rope, so think of a climbing rope, and you're wearing your harness, and you're not climbing up, you're going down.
Got it. Okay.
So you basically are at the top of the cliff. You have to step off the back of the cliff and start coming down, right? Perfect. Sound like investing. At some point, you have to step off the edge of the cliff and go for it. And we were well trained, and they certify before you're allowed on that course that you've been through ropes training, and they test you, right? So what's your knowledge base? What would you do to prepare for this challenge? And they lanyard Kip and I together. So there's 2 separate ropes running parallel, and they use what's kind of like a strap, a specific designed material for climbing. And that was the backup to the backup. And the assumption was if one of our ropes break, that the other person would just hang off of us. That's a pleasant thought. Right before, So we're anchored to these 3 Subarus and the ropes. And Kip and I are on the edge, and we're having to communicate with each other as teammates because we're physically connected and we're about 2 feet apart from each other. And what I said to myself is really applicable to the world of investing or any big goals, anything worthy of achieving. And I'm shaking a little, but you don't want to shake because there's TV cameras all over you, because we were an elite team, and they watch, there's teams from all over the world, including Red Bull out of Spain, which is a ferocious team, which is where you're based, ferociously gifted team. But we had to go. You have to make progress. And I said in my mind, okay, I know how to do this. 1, I've checked my gear. So think of your spreadsheets, all your due diligence. My teammates checked my gear, right? That's your team. The race officials have checked my gear. So that's your lenders, your CPA, your attorneys, the tenants, right? Mm-hmm. So there's all these checks before I jump off to validate, right? Mm-hmm. And this is on television, and the race company can't afford for anybody to die, and the insurance company won't let it happen. And then and the gear is designed to succeed even with my failure. What that is that's your spreadsheet, your due diligence, your modeling. Now, as long as you don't lie in, it's not going to give you BS answers on the way out. You can BS your way and get in whatever answer you want, but as long as you're truthful, you're going to be okay. And then the last thing is, well, if today's my day to die, I guess a higher power than me says today's my day to die, and I'm going to die doing what I love. Hmm. And then you get off the edge and take a leap and go. And it's the same as investing. You have all these tools. You have a team. And even if you're a one-person investor, you have a team. You can ask somebody. You can reach out to your bank. You can reach out. There's so many resources you can. And, don't forget your gut instinct. Yeah. At some point, you have to jump and go. And that's the big challenge with investing when you're talking big numbers like we do, is the amygdala in your brain. It's called amygdala because Latin is for almond. You have this little tiny thing the size of an almond that controls all the fear that pumps chemicals into your brain to keep you alive. So at some point, you have to have the ability to override this little almond. Your brain is 3.3 pounds, right? What is that, about 2 kilos? Yeah. Plus or minus, right? A little less, yeah. Something the size of an almond can override something that's 2 kilos in size, unless you let your tools know better and take the leap and go.
Yeah, and so being able to be able to see that, take the leap, go, there's the risk that is there, but you have the work that you've done up front, you have your core team that's there with you, you have your ecosystem that is around you. Ultimately, you can do as many things as you possibly can. And at the end of the day, all of those risk factors, you do as much as you can to mitigate, but you have to kind of take that step off and begin moving, right? If not, it's all a theoretical exercise. So
exactly.
So this is great because as we get ready to go into the Going Long Final 3, there is something that I also want to ask you, which I know most of the Going Long family is like, well, Billy, you should have asked him this earlier. I'm like, no, well, hang on a second. We're getting to that. Which, you've shared a lot, and knowing that you live in Colorado, and I mentioned in the very beginning, like that you have invested at least in 12 different states, right? And the whole premise here, Jason, is being able to invest beyond your backyard, right? And so everyone knows that I live in Barcelona, Spain. I've been investing exclusively back in the United States for the last 6.5 years in smaller multifamily, larger multifamily, mobile home parks, ATM machines, energy equipment, but all back in the United States. I have some very specific reasons why I've decided to invest long distance, but it's also maybe sometimes contrarian because people say, well, you should only invest, especially if it's intangible assets, where you live, because in that way you can actually go drive by and you can see it and you can do this and you do that. I fundamentally don't believe that because I've been doing the opposite for the last 6.5 years. And I'm always just curious. And one of the reasons I love to be able to speak to people like you, Jason, is you're syndicating capital, you're helping people, and you're not just investing in the outside of Denver, Colorado. My question is, why have you decided that going and investing beyond your backyard or not in your home city is something that makes sense for you and for your investors?
I invest not globally. I invest throughout the United States, though I would certainly look at investing globally under all circumstances because, and I'm sorry about the noise, it looks like the landscape crew is here. I do that because I'm looking for the best opportunity. And if the best opportunity is 500 miles or 5,000 miles away, what does it matter? As long as the deal underwrites, as long as you can verify the truth, as long as you can get a good property management company if you're remote, or invest with your capital with other people who have access to all those tools that you need, then frankly, it doesn't matter. Yeah. They make a couple of these magical things today, Billy. They make this thing called an airplane. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Maybe once or twice.
Yeah. You can get on an airplane for a relative inexpensive price. And somebody goes, oh, a flight's going to cost me $1,500. Okay. So you're not willing to spend $1,500 to invest $100,000 or $50,000? Come on.
Yeah.
And they have this thing called Google. And they have Google Satellite and Google Street View. And they have a bunch of other phenomenal tools that you can take advantage of to independently validate. So if you can earn a 7% return or a 10% return instead of a 2% return with a solid asset, then what's the downside risk?
Yeah, and I love that. So you think about the downside risk. You think about where whether you want to accept a 1%, a 2% versus something else. And you talked about the different technology, and you can even use FaceTime, right? If you're walking down the street or whatever kind of visual you want to use. But one of the things and that I just want to reiterate, because I never get tired of saying it, is as long as you understand what it is, the benefit that you're looking for a real asset to provide you, and whether that's tax benefits, whether that's cash flow, that's appreciation, it can be a number of different things. But whatever that is, then you go to the location that is going to give you the highest probability of getting that type of benefit. And then and I'm completely aligned with you on this, Jason, it's about making sure that you have the right team in place. And whether that team is managing an industrial park, an ATM machine, or a number of ATM machines, or energy equipment, or retail location, well, that's just part of it, because then afterwards it's all aligned. And so you can literally invest anywhere you want, actively or passively. And so I appreciate you sharing why, which is really being able to go where the opportunities are, because it just, once again, it helps us on this long distance journey so that people really literally do feel comfortable and confident being able to invest beyond their backyard and doing it with competent teams and being clear on what it is that they want to, what benefit that they're looking for, the tangible asset to provide them.
Right.
I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add.
Yeah. And thank you for that, Billy. So there's a reason why Warren Buffett suggests people should invest in a mutual fund and not do what he does, right? Because most people who invest in the stock market, in my opinion, are doing it off of the wrong reasons. They're doing it off of fear and greed. Yep. So GameStop's a great example, right? So they read on Reddit, oh my gosh, people are making money. That's greed. If I don't invest, I'm going to lose money and somebody else is going to make money. Fear. Now, neither of those had anything to do with the fundamentals that GameStop is not a good investment. If you look the price to earnings ratio, you'll go, oh, they're losing money. If you look at all their leases, they've got a lot of lease obligations they can't meet. Fear and greed. And so you can invest in that and go, well, it's a stock and I don't have to fly and it's not geographically bound. And then you can lose your butt because you didn't look at the fundamentals. One of the things that I love in particular about some of the areas that you were just describing is there's hard assets to back it. There's something at the end of the day that's going to be greater than zero that I can sell, as long as it's not a Ponzi scheme and you know that it's really there. And you don't need that to be within a short drive or a short walk to validate. Yeah. And if you're investing in other people, or other people's deals, well, you can validate that person. You can say, give me a list of references. Give me a list of other deals you've done. Show me your fundamentals. Show me your due diligence file. You can BS your way a little. You can't BS your way on a 1 meter stack of papers.
No, you've got to. The truth always comes to light. So, and I appreciate you taking the time to also break that down. And the thing is, Jason, we kind of have to get to the going long final three. Although I have to be very transparent with everybody. Like, I really don't want to get to the going long final three yet, but we gotta get there. And the thing is, Jason, I never ask anybody the going long final three unless you tell me that you're ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
You were born. You were born ready, man. I knew that was going to be the answer. So here we go. The first of the going long final three is really about, we started with you over on your side of the pond, as I like to call it nowadays, and we're going to bring it back to my side now. And help us understand, what is your favorite European city that you've either already visited or still on your bucket list to visit?
What do you think it is? Because I do have a very specific one.
Do you really want me to guess?
I do.
I may say it's Chamonix.
You're exactly right. Love Chamonix.
Yeah.
Love Chamonix. You're at a centralized hub of climbing, and geographically near Switzerland, near Italy, and you're right.
Yeah. I kind of, we talked about that a little bit before, so I kind of picked up on that. So next question. And it's one of the things that I've recognized, Jason, that really successful people, right? And you're a very successful person. Really successful people, one of the main reasons that they're successful is because they typically only make one mistake. And the fact that they only make one mistake on I get that wrong every time. I think it's kind of by design, but who knows?
You think you get the one mistake question wrong, and that's the mistake?
Yeah. Okay.
Very convenient.
Maybe by design. So no, but in all reality. So the thing is everybody makes mistakes or has learning opportunities or whatever the case may be. But the reality is that those people that tend to be successful and continue to move forward, they do something differently. And the fact of the matter is when they make the mistakes, they take a second to actually learn a lesson. And then they not just learn the lesson, but they apply the lesson. And so I would love for you to share with the Going Long family, what is the one lesson that you believe would really be impactful for us to know that will help the Going Long family move forward? That one lesson you'd share with us.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you an answer, but first I'd like to encourage everyone to Google after action report. We use them all the time. And if you're good at an after action report, and again, you're honest, you learn from your mistakes. You learn so much more from your points of pain. And so we do this regularly. I would think one of our biggest pain points are we let things, when they're not going up to expectation, drag out too long. So a bad leasing agent who's just not a fit for our property, I let it go on literally for a year. Should have let it go on for about 90 days. Yep. So finally let them go, brought a new one in, was very clear what my goals are, set expectations, and had weekly calls with that leasing agent. We made more progress in 6 months than we had in the prior 18 months combined. So you have to recognize if you're going to have you have an obligation to your staff and to yourself and to your investors to profit. That's an obligation. It's a responsibility. And if you're letting people drag out and you're not correcting or saying, hit these goals, or I need to let you go, if you can't let them go and replace them and get back on track, you shouldn't be in the business of running things that require a team. And we do need a team to succeed at real estate. So you have to feel comfortable being uncomfortable and doing uncomfortable things to get the results you want.
Awesome. Be comfortable with being uncomfortable to get the results that you want. And definitely I'm a big fan of also making sure that there is a profit for everyone that is involved. So thank you for that. And that brings us to the very last of the Going Long final three. And I know that you are an avid reader, and we always like to leave everyone with some knowledge for the brain. So what is the one book that you would recommend to the Going Long family, Jason?
I read my goal is 52 books a year. I usually average around 40. So, and I know you said one, but I may give you two anyways. The first one is Snowball by Alice Schroeder. And that's the biography of Warren Buffett. And it's phenomenal. It's a big book.
Big read, yeah. Boy,
is it good. And the other one is a very old one, and it's free, I think, on Amazon Prime. I don't know for in Europe, but it's called How to Own Your Own Mind. And it's by Napoleon Hill. And Napoleon Hill's famous for the book Think and Grow Rich, which is the very, very condensed version of How to Own Your Own Mind. How to Own Your Own Mind actually has the detailed full form interviews between him and, oh my gosh, I forget whether it's Carnegie or Rockefeller now. That's pretty embarrassing. The steel magnate would have been Carnegie. So Andrew Carnegie, but it has the full interviews. It is a phenomenal read.
How to Own Your Own Mind. Okay.
Yep. By Napoleon Hill.
Napoleon
Hill. And I recommend the Audible. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's, it's from the 20s. So it's like, golly, gee whiz, mister.
Yeah. It's part of the Gothenburg project, I guess. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. But it's exceptional wisdom.
Okay. Fantastic. Wonderful. So I am just thinking to myself that this conversation has gone by so quickly. I mean, just so fast, Jason. And I'm thinking about you at 17 when you're going to Mr. Jory's place and you're asking him if you could, were you at 17? Was it 17? Or was it at 17, and we went to his place, and you're asking him if you could mow the lawn for free, and then you were going to teach the others for free, and you were going to keep doing it until he thought that it was well enough that they would pay you. And then afterward, you had the gumption to a little while later to actually give him a call at his office on the direct line. He answered the phone, and you asked him how he made his money, and he said, well, I'm going to show you that, and I'll show you how to be wealthy. You'd spent 9 years with him. You learned a lot. And then since then, you've taken those lessons, you've taken them to new heights. You've been able to go out and impact lives around the globe. You've been able to work and build teams. We didn't really even dive into a lot of the philanthropic things that are so important to you and in your heart. And at the same time, you are focused on adding value to every single relationship that you bring, and also making sure that there is a profit in every single relationship. And because of the things that you've talked about, the things that you've shared, the results that you've been able to provide, like, I just want to keep talking to you. And I know that the entire Going Long family is thinking, man, Jason is amazing. I got to find out more about what he's doing. I want to find out more about his team. And I want to understand how I can also be only epic. And so help me and the entire Going Long family, Jason, understand what's the best way to contact you, know more about what you're doing, and more about your team.
Sure. So there's obviously the standard websites. So the websites are onlyepic, onlyepic.com. Mm-hmm. Our laundromat chain, which is focused on being a community resource center for low-income areas. It is a for-profit business model that gives back as well. Mm-hmm. Is Laundry Love, Laundry, but love is spelled Luv, not Love, Luv, laundrylove.com. Instagram is Jabo Mountain. And if anybody wants to email me, I just recognize my staff reads through all my email, and I don't know if it will get to me. It will find its way to me eventually, but it's jason@onlyepic.com.
All right, perfect. Jason@onlyepic.com. The team will pick it up. Eventually, it'll get to you. You've also Laundry Love, LUV.com, and right. onlyepic.com. And I've been to onlyepic.com, and I'm going to recommend that the entire Going Long family go over there, check it out. Jason's team has put together a wonderful website. It shows all the different criteria that they look through, the different assets that they've invested in, and also their philosophy. And I think that's something that's really important. So Going Long family, head over, show them some love, and reach out as well. So, Jason, I just want to thank you, man, from the bottom of my heart for investing your time with me and the entire Going Long family. And thank you very much, man. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Billy. Take care. Thanks.
All right. Awesome. And Jason, if you give me just a couple seconds, I just want to say a couple words to the Going Long family before we wrap up. And listen, Going Long family was awesome. Jason just left so much value, gave us a lot of not just strategic insight, but tactical things that you can actually do to add value to others. And, this conversation that he just shared, this is something that that someone else needs to hear today. Like the words that he was sharing, the experience that he shared. So take today's episode and share it with 2 or 3 other people, at least 2 or 3 other people. Be that person that can be impactful for the ones that you love, and be that person. At the same time, if you can take just a couple seconds to leave us an honest review of what you thought about the conversation, also what you're thinking about the podcast. It's something that I take very personally, go through each and every one, so that it's a way also to attract wonderful guests like Jason in the future. And it's also something that we do look at as a team to make sure that we're bringing you the value that you're looking for in the podcast each and every conversation. So until then, I'm really looking forward to welcoming you back on the very next episode. So go out, make it a great day, and thank you very much. Wow, don't you love hearing from top-notch experts in the field? When I was getting started, I really wish that I would have had access to such experts. And even more, I wish they would have given me like a really simple list of things to follow so that I could have gotten to my goals much faster and been much happier even sooner. So that's why I've created for you the 7 things that you should avoid in order to be successful in long distance investing. And you can pick that up really easily by going to billykeels.com/7 things to avoid. And also, if you liked today's episode, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. I'm looking forward to seeing you on our very next episode, so go out and make it a great day.